We're here at our soil processing plant. This is the beginning of the growing cycle.
Mike makes a living keeping plants healthy.
That's the main goal, keep it alive.
But at this scale, that's not always easy. Costa has to maintain the perfect ratio of light, water, temperature, and food.
Am I married?
Yeah.
Natural factors.
No?
Every
No
grower
woman wants to
loses
marry
some
you.
plants along the way. That's what the industry calls
No,
shrinkage.
you
Costa has taken steps to minimize
So
it.
if you
It
get
all
asked,
starts
you
with
just
this
get rid of
potting
her.
mix.
Yeah,
Costa uses coconut
Well, then you wanna
coir,
marry
which
them
comes
when
from
you
the
love.
fibrous middle part
I
of the
don't love
fruit.
no woman.
You don't have any kids?
Yeah.
Why do you have kids with her?
I've got
This
kids
is
with
a
a
more
girl, not my
sustainable
woman.
alternative than
She's
peat
a dirty
box,
woman.
which releases
Wow,
carbon
so you
dioxide
got
when
peat
harvested
with it.
and takes a
Yeah.
long time to grow back.
I don't do that. Dirty woman. What?
After the coconut
Storm
coir
is
arrives at
moving.
Costa, these
What?
machines rehydrate it. It's then ground and mixed with wood fibers.
Truth be told, man.
This machine drops the soil mixture and fertilizer on top.
So you're happy being
Workers
single?
gently flatten the soil by hand to get an even spread. Costa
girl
says
tells
this
me she
recipe
likes
gives
me,
plants the
then
best
let-
chance of
see me.
survival until they reach store shelves.
If she says she likes you,
Like
Next, they pass it
feelings.
over to the production area
Tell me
to
she's got
get their own
feelings,
plants.
love you.
and so you
These are
find that
cuttings,
aggressive,
taken
like
from
you
the
got
stems
that
of
offensive.
mature
And I
plants.
just fuck her off in it.
These workers place the cuttings
So
they
on
must
pots.
never say
They're
that.
fragile,
No.
so they have to move fast.
You don't like a person.
Yeah, but I just don't want girlfriends, innit?
Okay, if you don't want a girlfriend, just get a wife then. Just get married.
No.
Like the Muslim, you just go there.
During this process,
and you
growers
get married with a
actually
woman.
lose
If
an
you get
average
your
of
woman, you just
20%
get
of
married
their
to her and
plants.
then
Although Costa
get to
says
know
it
her
loses
after.
half that.
Nah, just
even
have,
sexual.
Another reason
just
plants
have-
die,
just have a few birds.
disease
Just have
and
a bird,
pests.
a
The
side
biggest
chick.
concern are
No
spider
girlfriend,
mites
no
and
commitment.
ladybugs.
There's
Do what I
something
want,
that
innit?
juices out of it. The leaf is not able to get good
No
proper
wedding, then.
nutrition.
No weddings.
No wedding.
Workers
No, we're
inspect
definitely
every
No
no
wedding,
If they
not
spot any
divorce.
spider mites, they
No,
fire
no
up these
messing
things
with
and
no
go,
divorce, no
which
wedding
is actually
started.
a repurposed leaf blower. The dust that comes out is full of bigger, predatory
Stay
mites.
single.
Women call men names. They say men for bastard. They say they can't deal with them. Men do exactly the same.
Predatory
We can't
mites
live
don't
with them, we
hit the
can't live
plants
without
with
them.
Without
but
it.
instead feed on the dangerous spider mites. They're also a safer alternative to pesticides.
Foil, shit on that.
Afterwards, this giant sprinkler moves through to water them.
This plant now will spend its life cycle growing here.
Costa then hardens off some of its plants to avoid any more shrinkage. That means towards the end of the growth cycle, growers starve the plants of humidity, light, and water. The goal? To mimic conditions indoors.
And then that plant will toughen up and we'll feel like we have more of a green thumb because we'll have been able to care for that plant better.
The plants then get one more inspection. One worker places plants in the belt, another inspects the quality, removing any dead leaves.
Have you seen
If they
Charles'
notice any
kid?
wilting,
He's
the
got
plants will
mixed
be
skin, you know?
removed, and Costa will try and
No, you
revive
don't see
them.
that?
But on
He's got
average,
mixed
another
skin, man. He's
10%
got
of
a girl
plants
and a boy.
perish during production in the U.S. To retailers all
And this
over
is
North
where he
America.
met the love of
Some
his
are
life.
sold
Yeah.
online,
Yeah.
Yeah, in the shop here, the girl
but the
she was working
shrinkage
here.
continues in
He
the
was like,
store.
"Who's that?
It's
Who's that?"
estimated about 10% of plants don't make it out.
Big box stores, they don't tend to have horticulturists on staff, they just have people that may or may not water things.
I don't know about you, but I've gone to many big box stores and those plants are in sad condition.
Think wilted or yellowing leaves or rotted roots.
So when we look at the tomatoes and the bananas and everything, we look for bruises, isn't really ripe enough, and so we need to look at plants even more that way.
But the biggest plant murderers are consumers.
You haven't grown a plant unless you killed it 3 times.
One survey found new gardeners kill 70% of their plants. Even experienced ones kill about a third of what they grow.
That's where we make our money, but hey, let's not say that, right? So folks, when they get plants, they tend to love them so much they may over care for them and they may not be so successful.
So out of 10 houseplants, only 3 will survive a significant amount of time in a customer's home. When everyone was stuck inside during the pandemic, more people turned to plants for their health benefits. And there's actually science to back that up.
Oh, you know,
Researchers
rice,
found that
rice.
having plants in hospitals can speed up recovery time for patients, reduce their anxiety levels, and elevate their moods.
The presence of plants does things like decrease blood pressure, decrease heart rate, decrease endorphins, all the things that make you feel better.
Plus, they're pretty. Exotic plants went viral on social media.
You red or
Today
blue?
on TikTok, there are over 4 billion views on videos with the hashtag PlantTikTok.
Yeah.
Social media influencers like Summer have made a living off sharing their collections and plant care tips.
You can make something look really good with photography and with lighting. People all of a sudden may feel the need to have that plant.
And it's driving sales at unprecedented levels.
And that's driven up prices.
We saw some people reselling their plants on social media for like $1,500 each.
The demand has put a squeeze on producers like Costa.
We have also grown our portfolio to include different varieties of plants.
But starting a new line of plants, like this Agricola, could take up to 8 years. And trends change fast. Through the hardening process, pest control, and quality checks, growers like Costa are working to minimize shrinkage. Costa says its shrinkage is half the national average. But as consumers buy more, there's a lot of waste. From the lost plants to the growing number of plastic pots, heat, water, and space across the supply chain.
You wouldn't typically think that house plants is an extractive industry, but in many cases it actually is an extractive industry.
But there are ways consumers and producers can be more green. Consumers can get clippings from friends and learn how to take care of the plants they've already purchased.
We understand how our pets function, we have to do the same with the plants. We have to figure out what exactly it is that they need, so we know not to put water content. Most of the time, don't bring up fertilizer.
Linda would like to see all growers swap peat moss for renewable potting mixtures, like the coconut coir Costa uses.
They can always compost the plants and recycle the pots.
But if consumers are having a hard time keeping plants alive, they should ask one simple question.
Do you really need that plant?
Ghana is the world's second biggest producer of cocoa, but the country only earns about 2% of the $100 billion industry. Cocoa growers here export most of their cocoa beans to Europe and North America, where they're turned into chocolate.
We are shipping out the cocoa in its raw state. And if you look at the value chain of cocoa, money is made in the finished product.
While big chocolate companies rake in billions a year, many cocoa farmers live in poverty, earning just $2 a day. And Ghanaian entrepreneurs like Michael have struggled to open chocolate factories in their home country.
We are trying to decolonize chocolate. This time around, we are saying that it can be done right here in Ghana.
Now, the government is funding efforts to grow a domestic chocolate industry. But can Ghana's entrepreneurs get a bigger share of the profits? We visit a cocoa farm and processing plant to find out. Ghana, together with Ivory Coast, grows over 60% of the world's cocoa. The countries sell to all the big chocolate companies, from Hershey's to Mars to Nestle, which process the beans abroad in mostly Europe and North America.
Bacho, your friend Joseph Bacha, my cocoa farm for 80 years ago.
Joseph grows 11 acres of cocoa, and it isn't easy. Farmers battle more extreme weather due to climate change, plant disease, and fatigued land. Every October, he and his family begin harvesting the yellow pods. It takes just 4 days. Joseph collects the pods and takes them to the breaking ground. Here, workers crack them open and remove the beans by hand. Joseph uses the leftover pods as compost under his trees. Joseph then dries the beans for another week. In total, he packs 75 bags of beans a year. His income is about $27 a day. It's a high wage for a Ghanaian farmer, because Joseph grows organic cocoa without pesticides. But many farmers in Ghana live at or below the poverty line, earning less than $2 a day. That's because the majority of farms are small and aren't certified organic, according to Christy, a cocoa scholar nicknamed the Doc of Chalk.
We're talking about really small plots, and this is part of the reason why cocoa farmers are so poor.
But that's not the only reason farmers make so little.
Cocoa's being farmed in Ghana for over 100 years. There are many parts of the country where the land is really fatigued now, and the trees are old.
In the 15th and 16th centuries, Portugal and Spain monopolized cocoa, controlling production and trade from their colonies in Latin America and the Gulf of Guinea. Europe's elite were the biggest customers. The crop arrived in what's now Ghana in 1876. Around the same time, the British declared the southern region a colony and began invading north. Locals owned and ran all the small farms, but the raw product was exclusively exported to Europe.
A lot of what we know today as the contemporary chocolate really grew out of this trading relationship between Ghana and Britain, including the flavor of chocolate itself.
Although Ghana gained its independence in 1957, its one-way cocoa trade with Europe still exists today, and it's kept farmers at the beginning of the supply chain in poverty for generations. To help raise farmer wages, Ghana and its neighbor Ivory Coast teamed up in 2019.
The two largest cocoa producing countries in the world, and so when they get together on something, everyone has to pay attention.
They introduced the fixed price system, which set a price floor for cocoa. In 2020, Ghana set the price floor at $2,600 a metric ton. That included a $400 premium added to every ton of cocoa.
And this value goes directly to the farmers.
The premium is called the Living Income Differential, or LID. It was the first of its kind in the chocolate industry, and it meant farmers took home nearly 30% more money than the year before. At first, big chocolate companies agreed to pay the LID.
You can't really not buy Ghanaian and Ivorian cocoa, so the big buyers really had no choice.
The LID's markup may seem like a lot, but the millions it's raised to combat farmer poverty is a fraction of big chocolate makers' sales. But soon after it launched, reports surfaced accusing Hershey's of buying cocoa without paying a premium.
It's sad to note that these companies who have the resources may not want to abide by this simple appeal.
In an email to Business Insider, the company said Hershey supports and is fully participating in the Living Income Differential. When the corporations do pay, the LID has helped farmers.
Now, and what? It's pushing farmers to even increase their yield. That's how come last year we're able to hit a record 1.2 million tons of beans.
After farmers dry the beans, they're bagged up. About 70% of these beans will be sent overseas. Ghana processes only 30% of its cocoa beans domestically. But in 2020, at a press conference in Switzerland, the president announced he wanted to change that.
We intend to process more and more of our cocoa in our country with the aim of producing more chocolate ourselves.
And he said it right in front of the top commerce ministers of Switzerland, one of Ghana's biggest customers.
That statement in Switzerland caused a lot of controversy. I must say, we clearly mentioned our intention to put in effort to also add value within Ghana.
To support cocoa processing inside Ghana, the government created a free zone outside Accra. Any factory operating inside gets a tax break. Lloyd Ashley runs niche cocoa industry in the free zone.
In the free zone enclave, you are getting 10 years free duty on your imported parts or equipment, so it gives you the opportunity to also increase capacity.
Niche has become Ghana's second largest cocoa manufacturer. The company says it processes 10% of the country's cocoa, and Niche processes 2 tons of it an hour. The cocoa beans arrive here from farms all over rural Ghana. Workers stack the bags high, then cut them open one by one. The beans funnel into this grate on the floor. And the rest of the process is controlled digitally, from roasting the beans to grinding them into cocoa mass. That's then sent to get mixed with milk and sugar.
And from there, it comes here for a tempering process, a cooling process, and then a packaging process.
Niche has been pretty successful, but for small companies outside the free zone, it hasn't been as easy to get up and running. Michael runs Fair Afrique, a cocoa maker that opened in Amanasi to be closer to cocoa farmers. But since it's outside the free zone, it didn't get the tax breaks. Fair Afrique also had trouble buying cocoa beans.
As shocking as that may sound, it's really hard in Ghana to procure cocoa beans.
Another hurdle keeping Ghana's chocolate industry from taking off,
Well, it's very hard to make chocolate in Ghana.
For one, there's no dairy industry.
Anybody producing chocolate in Ghana is definitely importing large volumes of milk from either Europe or other continents.
Chocolate makers also have to import sugar, mostly from Brazil. And finally, it's hot in Ghana.
Chocolate by its nature is very sensitive to temperature. Any rise in temperature may cause the chocolate to melt.
There's not the kind of cold chain that you need to distribute chocolate effectively within Ghana or much of West Africa.
And building out that cold chain has been expensive.
We have used insulated building materials for some sections of our building. Some sections of the building is completely insulated with tissue.
Also, Ghana's power grid is sometimes unreliable.
Electricity, that is another issue here. Although there's power, it's never stable.
Farafreak's top sellers are finished chocolate bars. Inside temperature-controlled rooms, this machine pumps the chocolate into
But it's a
molds.
very hot unit.
So
It's a very, very
our
hot unit.
installation
One of the first
capacity
units
is 10,000 bars of chocolate every hour.
2010.
That's a fraction of what a Hershey's or Mars factory can do. This machine wraps the chocolate bars. With 68
When the
workers, the
ones
company
that
is
they do
scaling
now
up
is
to
200
produce
or
15 million bars
220
a year.
The practice has always been that the raw materials are sent to
Okay, see
you
now,
for
Africa.
processing. At this time around, we are saying that it can be done right here in Ghana.
sɛ yɛ process cocoa no ɛwɔ
You go on
Ghana
Sunday
ha
sometime?
yɛbɛnya no sika a yɛbɛba aban no nsɛm nti yɛbɛma yɛ aban bɛyɛ yi yɛ electricity nsɛm bɛyɛ yi hospital ɛne schools.
But Christie says the country still has a long way to go.
Definitely no silver bullets for sure. When you have a whole system like colonialism, it doesn't shift quickly.
While there are 5 times more processing facilities in Ghana today than a decade ago, most only process cocoa into intermediate products like
Cocoa butter.
And there was a period where everyone was
Not
eating
chocolate.
healthy food and
96% of Mitch's
were open
business
everywhere
are these
where people
intermediate
sell,
products.
you know, like healthy
Most
food,
of the
rice
finished
and
bars are still made
protein. I
abroad.
don't know.
We need to
And then the
increase the
protein shop
export of
came
cocoa in the semi-finished and also in the finished state.
Lloyd wants to create demand for finished chocolate within Ghana.
Cocoa consumption is very, very low in Africa. I mean, compared to Europe, where you have an average 5 kilograms per person consumption, you're talking about 0.4 in Africa.
That's because, historically, finished chocolate bars had to be imported from Europe, so they cost a lot. To create new demand in Ghana, Mitch is making a chocolate drink Lloyd hopes to sell in schools. He also hopes to source ingredients from inside Africa, dairy from Egypt and sugar from South Africa. To train talent in Ghana, Farafreak started this lab and hired locals to develop new flavors. And for farmers, advocates want to raise the cocoa price floor to about $3,100 a metric ton. And they want big chocolate companies to foot more of the bill. Nearly every big chocolate producer has programs set up to lift farmers out of poverty. But by some estimates, 73 to 90% of Ghana and Ivory Coast cocoa farmers are still below living income standards.
If you're the CEO of these big companies, it's time to come down and look at these yourself.
As the industry is set to grow about 5% in the next 6 years, Ghanaian cocoa farmers and processors are vying for a larger stake in the big business of chocolate.
Yɛ Ghana ha no, anka cocoa companies anaa chocolate wɔn a wɔyɛ chocolate no dodoɔ mpo mmra country ha na wɔmmɛ processi cocoa no. Na cocoa no a yɛdua yɛde yɛahoɔden ɛyɛ ho adwuma no, dodoɔ no nyinaa yɛyɛ ho adwuma wɔ Ghana ha. Ɛbɛboa yɛn, ɛbɛboa ɔman no.
Can we also be allowed to add value? It will be changing the lives of the people that play real roles in growing the bean.
These bakers in Ukraine make 700 pounds of Passover matzahs a day, even as Russian forces advance. When we filmed at the Tiferes Hamatzos bakery, the city of Dnieper wasn't invaded, but it was surrounded by war zones. For many here, making this sacred bread feels more important than ever.
Еще плюс у нас через несколько дней будет святой праздник, праздник Песах.
This would have been illegal back when their country was part of the Soviet Union. At one point, Jews were jailed for making or even just eating matzah. But these days, the country supplies an estimated 20% of all handmade matzah to the US market.
Then now we're back again, sending out the best matzah, the real matzah, throughout the whole world.
Still, more than half of Americans buy matzah that comes off an assembly line. The last family-owned matzah maker in America, called Streitz, can produce up to 1 million square-shaped sheets in a day. And it's been at it for nearly a century. Whether it's machine-made or handmade, many Jews have dedicated their lives to preserving what they call the bread of the poor. So how did this traditional food grow into a $110 million industry? Handmade matzah, called shmora, or guarded in Hebrew, is what the Ukrainian bakery Tiferes HaMatzos specializes in making.
You have to keep and you have to secure the matzah.
This is Rabbi Meir Stambler. He inherited the business from his father 12 years ago. Today, he supervises the work in accordance with Jewish law. The bakery grinds the wheat on site, and Rabbi Stambler regulates the amount of heat and moisture to keep the dough from rising.
This is custom made for us, making sure it doesn't get heated too much from the moment that the wheat is in the field, and if it has any contact with water, that is already a problem.
The unleavened bread is made of just 2 ingredients, flour and water. But making the dough is labor intensive. Joseph says this helps him keep his mind off of what's happening outside.
Люди продолжают жить, опять продолжают выполнять наш святой долг, работают в мацапекарне.
It's all made by hand. It's going to take it about a minute until it's ready.
From there, it's a race against the clock, because the dough has to make it to the oven in just 18 minutes, so it doesn't rise.
When the Jews left Egypt, didn't have time to bake their bread, so they had it very fast, and what they ate was matzah.
And everyone who touches the matzot until it's baked must be observant Jews. This metal rod helps workers knead the dough faster.
He's making sure that it's being well done, so this is a real piece of dough.
Then, they roll it into long logs and flatten it out with rolling pins. When it makes it to the oven, it bakes fast.
Maximum 10 seconds, you'll see it's out of the oven, and this is already matzah to eat for the Seder night.
Production has been going strong, despite the Russian invasion. This would be unthinkable in previous generations. The city's chief rabbi, Levi Yitzchak Schneerson, was arrested and exiled in 1939 for providing matzah for the region's Jews. But since the fall of the Soviet Union, Dnipro now has the most Jews per capita of any city in Ukraine. The massive 7-branched menorah center and surrounding neighborhood has become a hub for war relief efforts. Russia has targeted Ukrainian missiles on the outskirts of the city, and Dnipro's airport was recently attacked.
They don't have time to be afraid. We're busy with saving lives, evacuations, humanitarian aid, making sure they get whatever they need in medicine and food, and really saving lives 24/7. There's no time to be afraid. There's no time to think about it.
Rabbi Stambler, a member of the Chabad Hasidic movement, takes pride in contributing to this renaissance with matzah made the old-fashioned way. The constant supervision and labor makes shmora matzah 3 to 6 times more expensive than machine-made. Even though the biggest shipments left Ukraine earlier this year, the bakery exports right up until the Passover holiday.
Это маца, которая отправляется в Америку. Очень вкусная, очень хорошая, очень тонкая. Всю мацу мы делаем с любовью и отправляем.
I don't think you've seen that one. It was
Ukraine normally exports about 70 tons of meat each year, but war is getting in the way. Rabbi Stambler said he had 2 containers full of matzah temporarily stuck at the ports in late February.
2 hours before the boat was supposed to leave, the war broke out. We released them, but it was too late to send them to the States. Some of them stayed over here, some of them we managed to ship to the UK.
This kind of handmade matzah nearly disappeared after World War II, when mass-produced ones became more affordable. It was the son of the same rabbi arrested in Dnipro who revived it in the 1950s.
Hey, pal,
Rabbi
you can do this. You get a loyalty card with this is my number here. You just take a picture of him. If you
And the
get
number
8
of people
Nigerians,
who eat
you get 10
shmura
pounds
matzah continues to expand. America produced 1 million pounds of shmura matzah in 2017, and the market has grown 30% since then. But handmade matzah makes up just a third of all matzah sold in the United States. Mass-produced ones make up the bulk of the $110 million industry. Stripes is the last large family-owned matzah producer in the U.S. The company managed to stay afloat, but it had to relocate to this facility in Orangeburg, New York, in 2017, after running a factory in Manhattan for nearly a century.
The last day leaving the factory was a very sad day. We stayed probably longer than we should have, just out of nostalgia.
That's Aaron Gross, the great-great-grandson of the company's founder, Aaron Stripe. Although the machines have been upgraded, he still uses the same recipe.
We're going to say
Right.
about 200 pounds of flour.
Welcome to the hair doctors.
70,
This
80
is
pounds
the
of water,
loyalty
depending on,
card.
humidity in the air.
And this is how it works. You get 8 stamps, you get £10
Just like at the handmade bakery,
discount
workers
or
here have to
£10
beat the clock.
voucher.
The dough drops through a
So
hopper to the floor
ask for
below.
your card when you come here
Kosher
next
laws
time.
require
Have a good
that the
day.
bowls be cleaned in
We open
between
Monday
each
to
batch.
Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Just like in Ukraine,
See you soon. Please don't
everyone
forget to
who
subscribe,
handles the
like,
dough
and
for
share,
beer is an observant
and
Jew.
comment.
During the run-up to